Let's look at Congress. Now, Congress is part of the legislative branch. Now, when we're talking about Congress, we're saying the House and the Senate. We call that to be a bicameral system. And bicameral simply means that we have two chambers within our Congress. Just as simple as that. One of those chambers is the House of Representatives. That is the larger of the two bodies, larger in size. Some basics on the House is that you have to be qualified to be in the House, and those qualifications are in the Constitution. 7 years a citizen of the United States, you must be at least 25 years of age, and a resident of the state that you're elected from. If you're elected to the House, you serve a 2-year term. And there are a total of 435 members of the House of Representatives. That number is not written into the Constitution, but that is the number of what we have. This is the makeup of the House of Representatives by party as of February of 2014. There are 232 Republicans, 200 Democrats, and then there were 3 vacancies at that time. What I need you to know is, at this point in time, there are more Republicans than there are Democrats in the House. That could change as of the November election, but as of right now, that is where we're at. The other thing that's important to know is that the House is based on proportional representation. And what proportional representation means is that it's based on population. The more populated a state is, the more members that state gets in the House. So South Dakota is not a very populated state. We only get 1 member of the House. California, on the other hand, a very populated state, they get 55 members of the House of Representatives. You can't have fewer than 1, and that's where we're at, is 1. Now, because population shifts, sometimes we have some changes, and we have to count the people. So there is a census that is taken every 10 years, and the purpose of that census is for reapportionment in Congress. And every 10 years then there may be a shift in how many members each state gets. For example, after the 2010 census, Texas here picked up 4 seats. Arizona picked up 1. Florida picked up 2, and so on. But because the number stays the same as 435, other states must lose members then. So states like Ohio and Michigan and New York and Pennsylvania lost some. All these in white here, apportionment and reapportionment did not affect them. They didn't gain, nor did they lose. But every 10 years you see that shift. In fact, if we go back 10 years previously to the 2000 census, you see that Texas picked up 2 that particular year too. Florida picked up 2, and so on. These states, the ones in red, lost. The yellows didn't change one way or the other. So every 10 years we get that. The other thing that's important to realize is that if you're a member of the House, you aren't representing the entire state. Now, in these yellow states like South Dakota and Montana and Wyoming, since we only have 1 member of the House, they do represent the entire state. But for the most part, you represent a district within the state. And that's what you're representing. Not the entire state, but a district within the state. And this map shows the different districts in the United States. Here's Minnesota. Minnesota has 8 members of the House. District 7, right here. District 6, right here. Now, these districts are based on population, not on geographic. So it should be approximately the same number of people in District 7 as there is in District 8, as there is in District 6, and so on. So the districts that are covering in large cities are smaller in size, but should be equivalent to the population. If you're elected from District 7, that's who you represent. You don't represent the entire state. You just represent the people from District 7. And those are the only people who get to vote for you. So in Minnesota, they may have 8 members of the House, but they don't get to vote for all 8 of them. If you live right here, you only get to vote for the person running in District 8. And that person in District 8 may look out for the entire state, but they're really looking out for the best interest of their district first. Kansas. These are their districts. District 1 in western Kansas is the least populated. So all of District 1 is equivalent to the same population as everybody in District 4, which is equivalent to District 3. Indiana, again, same concept. California, again, same concept. Now, South Dakota only has 1 member, so they represent the entire state. Sometimes when a state gains a member, like Texas has gained a few, they have to redistrict. And when they redistrict, they have to draw up those district lines within the state. Now let's say that this is South Dakota, and let's say that South Dakota picks up one more seat. I'm going to go to here so I can draw on this. If South Dakota would pick up a seat, we would have to redistrict our state. Okay, so let's just say, we go, well, why don't we just go like we normally do down the Missouri River? Well, that's great if they're equal population on either side, but we know that's not going to be the case. So just going along the Missouri River is not going to work. We might have to draw up a line. Maybe it would look something like this. Maybe everything, and they usually go along county lines. Let's say that this becomes District 1, and then everything else is District 2. That's saying that the population here is equivalent to here. Since we live in what would be District 1 then, we would only get to vote for this person. Now, it's unlikely that that's going to happen. South Dakota is not going to pick up another member of the House in the foreseeable future. All right, back to the PowerPoint. When we look at members of Congress, people who are already elected and then running again for re-election, we call those incumbents. And incumbents in the House have a really high re-election rate. A part of that is because of the districts. The districts are drawn in a way which favors those from one particular party. We'll talk about that another day. It's called gerrymandering. Either way, the incumbents in the House get elected or re-elected at a very high rate. This shows the incumbent re-election rate in the House of Representatives since 1964. It's never got below 80. Lots of times it's up at 98, 99%. Usually in the 90s. So if you're in Congress, there's a very good chance that you're going to get re-elected into Congress. We have one member of the House of Representatives, that is Kristi Noem. She represents the entire state. She's a Republican. The House of Representatives also has what we call the Speaker of the House. That is the most important person in the House, the presiding officer. They have the most power. They only have one vote, but they still have more power than anybody else in the House of Representatives. They get to decide what bills get voted on, and they have a number of powers that we'll look at in another time. But the Speaker of the House always comes from the majority party. So because the Republicans have more members of the House right now, the Speaker of the House is going to be a Republican. Our current Speaker of the House is a man named John Boehner. He's a Republican from Ohio. Now that's the House. The Senate's a little bit different. The Senate is smaller. They're similar, but they're smaller. The qualifications are a little bit different. 9 years a citizen. You got to be at least 30. You also have to come from the state that you're elected from. The term of office is 6 years rather than 2. And 1/3 of the senators are up for election every 2 years. There are a total of 100 members in the Senate. Every state gets 2 because it's based on equal representation. So because there's 50 states and every state gets 2, there's 100 members of the Senate. This is the makeup of the Senate today. We have 53 Democrats, 45 Republicans, 2 independents that typically side with the Democrats. So right now the Democrats have the advantage in the Senate. The Republicans have an advantage in the House. These are the 2 independents. Not necessarily important. I just thought I'd put that on there in case you were wondering. Representation in the Senate is based on equal representation, meaning that each state gets the same amount. So even though California is more powerful than us in the House of Representatives, South Dakota is equal in the Senate with all the other states. The vice president is technically the head of the Senate, but he can only vote if there's a tie, which rarely happens. I don't believe Vice President Biden in the last 6 years has voted once to break a tie. And if there's not a tie, he can't do anything. So really then the Constitution says that the pres pro tem becomes the presiding officer. But today that's pretty much just a strictly an honorary position. So that's not an important position either. The real power goes to the Senate Majority Leader. And the Senate Majority Leader has a similar job as the Speaker of the House. Not exactly the same, but similar. The Senate Majority Leader always comes from the majority party. So right now the Democrats have the majority in the Senate, so they will have the Majority Leader. And today the Majority Leader is Harry Reid. Now again, after the November election, all these things could change. But as of today, and I'm doing this in September of 2014, Harry Reid is the Majority Leader. Mitch McConnell from Kentucky is the spokesperson for the minority party, and we call him the Minority Leader. South Dakota gets 2 senators. They both represent the entire state. Tim Johnson is one of them. John Thune is the other. John Thune is a Republican. He is not up for re-election this year. Tim Johnson is going to resign this year. He's going to step down. He's retiring. So his spot will be filled by somebody else. So starting next year in 2015, we will have John Thune and somebody else as a senator from South Dakota. Both of these senators represent the entire state. This is a picture of the Senate. Notice they each have desks, not a major thing here. The House, this is the picture of the House. They don't have desks. They have more people there. They basically, when they're in the floor of Congress, sit in these pews, benches. Now we could do a quick comparison of the House and the Senate, and we'll see that there's a lot of differences between them. These differences are not necessarily huge, and some of them we haven't covered in depth yet. But you'll notice that the 2-year term in the House versus the 6-year term in the Senate. That House is based on representative, or the members of the House represent just their district, where members of the Senate represent the entire state. 435 versus 100 members of the Senate. You've got to be at least 25 to be in the House, where you have to be at least 30 in the Senate. Proportional representation in the House versus equal representation in the Senate. The House leader is the Speaker of the House. The Vice President and the Majority Leader are the leaders of the Senate. Now, some things we haven't talked about, but the House actually brings up impeachment charges, where the Senate plays the jury in the role of impeachment. When it comes to a filibuster, again, something we haven't talked about yet, but we will in class, the House does not allow a filibuster. The Senate does. And the Senate has a few rules, that powers that the House does not. First of all, confirmation of judges. That's done by the Senate, and the same thing with ratifying treaties. Both of those are Senate powers. So there are some differences. They're both part of the legislative branch. They have some similarities, but they have some differences. Now, what are the similarities? Well, both are elected by people of the state. The House are represented from people from that district of the state, but they're still elected from people by the state. And they both represent the state. Granted, the senators represent the entire state. The House represents the interests of their district first, but the state second. But they still represent their state. The powers that are given to Congress, those enumerated powers, those are shared. So the power to make law is a shared power between the House and the Senate. The power to tax, the power to declare war, those are all shared powers of both the House and the Senate. And they have the power to make laws. And for any law to be made, it has to go through both the House of Representatives and the Senate. So that is a shared power. This is a quick overview of the House and the Senate.